I have got a double hockey trade involving JJ Peterka and Bowen Byram that I might become obsessed with. I'll tell you about it coming up on Locked On Sabres.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody, and welcome into this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day, as always, especially here in the offseason, where we're in the month of May, and we got a month of the draft and a month plus the free agency, but a lot to get to on today's show. Excited to have you with us. If you would like to become a part of our Locked On Sabres text club, you could definitely do that. Have a lot of fun with us there over at joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSabres. You can watch the show on YouTube. Hi, if you're watching. I've got today on a golf hat that says "Play Bad Fast." Got to keep the pace up out there on the course, even if you're having a tough day. Lot to get to on today's show. As I mentioned, Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a Wednesday. Trade conversations to be had. We talked a lot about Bowen Byram trade ideas on our last show. If you missed that, you can check it out wherever you may listen to your podcast. Today, I've got a double trade involving Bowen Byram and also JJ Peterka, who we'll talk a little bit about today, because Peterka finds himself the subject of some trade conversation again. Frank Saravelli, dailyfaceoff.com, who was one of the two big insiders at the trade deadline that believed Peterka was getting dealt to the New York Rangers, has listed Peterka as the number one player on his trade bait board going into the 2025 off season. So I've got an idea for you. I meet a lot of resistance with Peterka trade ideas, or just not even that I'm trying to move him. More so whenever his name pops up, it's no, don't want to do it. And I understand. He's a great player. He's developed very nicely. He's one of the few young guys that has taken that next step and hasn't let down Sabre fans like Jack Quinn, Dylan Cousins, Matthias Samuelsson. I could go on and on and on. Peterka's not in that group because he has produced and he has played well. So I get why nobody wants to see him dealt. I actually might have an idea for you today, though. You might say, okay, I do that, though. I don't want to trade Peterka, but I would do that. Also on today's show, stick around a little bit later on. We going player by player, looking back on their last season and looking ahead to next season. I got a text question about Connor Clifton today, and I figured, well, on a show where we're going to be spending a lot of other time doing other things, all right, let me put Connor Clifton in here today at the end. We'll talk about Clifton and whether he's going to play for the Sabres again. I'll share my opinions on that a little bit later on. I don't really know what's ahead for him, but I know what I would like for what's ahead for Connor Clifton. So all that coming up on today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast. So let's get right into it on this double trade idea that I've already kind of become obsessive with, even though it's just an idea that I thought of, but it was sparked by a couple of different things that we've seen over the last week and players that you see trade rumors about and are written about. And today, I'm just, scrolling through Twitter, and there's Elliot Friedman, biggest insider in the game. And he says that the New York Rangers, the team that, remember, was the team we thought JJ Peterka might be going to at the trade deadline. Friedman says today that K'Andre Miller, defenseman for the Rangers, his name is out there in trade conversations around the league. Not a guarantee, but they are testing the market on Miller, is the way that Friedman put it. So this is a nice player. This is a very good player. And if he is available, which here's an indication that he might be, the Rangers having a disastrous season where nobody is probably safe. Chris Drury on the hot seat. He's got to make some big moves this summer to get that thing going in the right direction. And K'Andre Miller, he at least took a step back offensively this past season, only putting up 27 points in 74 games, playing just under 22 minutes a night, but a very good defensive defenseman in comparison to the guy that I'm going to put into this double trade idea, which is who we've been talking about, which is Bowen Byram. Miller is a better all-around defenseman. He's a bigger player than Bowen Byram is. So that got me thinking about, well, okay, Miller and Peterka, because the Rangers seem to want Peterka. Here is a double hockey trade idea that is not too far-fetched and just might be perfect enough to get a Sabre fan to say, all right, for that, I might be willing to move JJ Peterka. The trade idea is, I'm Kevin Adams. I call the New York Rangers upon seeing this report from Friedman that K'Andre Miller's name is out there. Well, all right, Rangers, you want JJ Peterka. I know you want JJ Peterka. So, and I like to do hockey trades. So here's a hockey trade for you. I'm going to give you Peterka. You're going to give me K'Andre Miller. That's it. 1-for-1 deal. I get another defenseman. You get a forward that you are interested in. Then, because you have made a deal adding another left shot defenseman that is going to need to be paid, you take Bowen Byram and you call the Los Angeles Kings, new GM Ken Holland, and you say, all right, Ken, this defenseman, who I think would fit perfectly into that team, fits the role for what Byram is looking for, can play top power play minutes, future number one defenseman. Was reading just a blog from LA the other day about why Byram makes sense for the LA Kings. And Quinton Byfield has no trade protection and has yet to really break out in a huge way. He has not put up 60 points yet in the NHL. Some pretty good success, though, otherwise. I'm going to call Ken Holland and say, I got a hockey trade for you. I've got this young championship-winning defenseman who's looking for a bigger role. He's very talented. He was highly drafted. I'm going to give you Bowen Byram. You're going to give me Quinton Byfield, who is under contract, by the way, for several more years. And big ifs, if you get both Chris Drury and Ken Holland to say yes to those hockey trades, what you have then done is traded JJ Peterka and Bowen Byram for K'Andre Miller and Quinton Byfield. Size-wise, all the talk of the Sabres need to get bigger. The Sabres need to get meaner, more physical. You will have added 9 inches of total height in that swap and 45 pounds between the two. You are getting 2 bigger, better defensive, more well-rounded players than Byram and Peterka, who are gifted offensively, but lack that size, that physicality, and that all-around defensive game that the Sabres look like they need. That's the swap. That's the trade. Big ifs. Big, a lot that you need to have happen. The other thing that kind of makes this idea almost too good to be true, you don't have to worry about anything about trade protections and a player vetoing a deal. Nobody in the trade has trade protection. Nobody. K'Andre Miller, a restricted free agent, so he doesn't have any trade protection, doesn't have a contract. He cannot become an unrestricted free agent until 2027. So you have 2 years to get him onto a long-term contract or move him somewhere down the road. More, you would be motivated, though, to make that a long-term relationship. He will sign a deal as an RFA. If he is skeptical about the idea of staying long-term in Buffalo, you still have 2 years, not just 1, but 2 years of control. And Byfield, as I mentioned, kind of too good to be true. Quinton Byfield has 6 years left on his deal. He's under contract till July of 2029. 22 years old, $6.25 million. And again, no trade protection until the 28-29 season. his final year under contract when he has a 10-team no-trade list. He can't say no. Miller can't say no. What am I missing here? Other than, you got to get 2 massive trades to go through, and you need 2 GMs to say yes to those. That's the part that, is unlikely to happen. But what doesn't make sense here from a Sabre standpoint? I love it. I absolutely love it. And that's coming from somebody who has no qualms about JJ Peterka as a player. And I absolutely want to see the Sabres sign him long-term. I like Bowen Byram as a player. I know he only gives you the elite production when he's playing with Rasmus Dahlin, and that would make me skeptical to pay him. But all around, I do like Byram's game a lot more than the numbers would indicate that he gives you. With that, both those things being said, I still love these trades, and I would love to see them happen. If you are curious, about some of the goals above replacement numbers and what some of the advanced stats say about these 2 players, on top of the size that you're getting, as I mentioned, you're getting more well-rounded players. Quinton Byfield, 82nd percentile defensively last year. Keandre Miller, 42nd percentile defensively, but I got a chart up from Evolving Hockey on our YouTube channel. If you see, his goals above replacement was more than twice as worse as his expected goals above replacement. So maybe he got a little bit unlucky last season in some areas. So I'm not really worried about that. I think Miller is a better defensive defenseman and more likely to be an Owen Power partner going forward than Bowen Byram is, which I think we've already seen tested, and that does not work. So let me know what you think about this deal. It is Byram to LA for Byfield. It is, and it is Peterka to the Rangers for Miller. Peterka for Miller, Byram for Byfield. I love it. You let me know what you think about it. When we come back, more on just generically the idea that Peterka could be dealt this summer and what I would like to see have happen with Peterka, if this double trade idea doesn't. I'll let you know when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast is presented by Wonderful Pistachios. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios are one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, and that gives you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller a lot longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for those busy days, whether I'm snacking at my desk, getting ready for the podcast, or if I'm on a road trip, if I'm driving an hour to golf, have a bag ready to go, get that quick protein boost, always my go-to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic as well. The no shells, Wonderful Pistachios, grab and go ease. Just grab a handful. That's what I love going for. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com today to learn more. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. I like that trade idea so much. I think I might lead with it on WGR tomorrow morning because I'm kind of in love with it. I'm kind of in love with it. Big, good players. Byfield hasn't put up the big numbers yet, but 50 plus point seasons back-to-back years. It's not like he hasn't done anything. By the way, one thing you might be wondering about positionally, I'm good with Miller, left shot defenseman, playing on the left side, Power on the right side. And then Byfield is more of a center, but has also played wing, and I would have no problem moving him to the wing. Or if you want to try him back at center and move Kulik to wing, you just have options. So I'm never afraid of adding more center depth because you could always move those guys to the wing. And almost always it works out. All right. JJ Peterka. So number 1 trade bait board listed guy on Frank Saravelli's trade list for this summer. And we've talked about this a little bit, but Peterka's name it kind of is always out there as well. Does this guy want to stay long-term? How committed is he to this city and this organization on the long term? He certainly is right now. There are no questions about his work ethic right now. There are no questions about him being motivated to produce right now. It's just, does he want to sign a 7-8 year contract? That's where there's been some question. And that's why it's not that stunning to me that you do see his name pop up here and there. I would imagine the source of that is the belief from other teams through Peterka, or more likely Peterka's agent, obviously, that, yeah, he might not want to stay there for 8 years. That he's not trying to get out right now, but, you know, maybe in the future there is something, and a team would want to get the jump on that if they like the player enough. And why wouldn't you like JJ Peterka as the player? Amazing 5-on-5 score. Still would like to see him get a little bit better on the power play. 27 goals last year, 28 goals the year before that. Took a big step up as a playmaker this past season. Played almost 2 more minutes a night than he did the previous year. He took a step last season. It took a big step the year before. So any team should want JJ Peterka, especially at his age, 23 years old. You get contract control. Everything kind of works in your favor if you're able to acquire the player. Very valuable. If I'm the Buffalo Sabres, you know, sans this double trade idea that I have, there's not a lot of trade ideas out there that would make me want to trade JJ Peterka. Even if I'm Kevin Adams and I want to do an 8-year deal with him right now, and he's like, yeah, I'm not really looking to do that at this point in time. Well, then what I would want the Sabres to do, what I would do if I were Kevin Adams in that moment, is say, well, all right, let's keep playing you. I'm not moving you unless somebody blows my socks off, unless I get, it would have to be a hockey trade. I am not, if I'm Kevin Adams, trading JJ Peterka for picks and prospects under any circumstance. I am never, ever, ever even entertaining that idea. It does not help me at all for what I need for this organization. So it would have to be, that's why I bring up Keandre Miller. Needs to be a player that I know is going to step in and help me right away. And I also need to feel that it's more likely that player, one of 2 things needs to be true, because why else am I going to do the deal? That player needs to be a better fit for what I need on my team than JJ Peterka is, or I need to believe that that player is more likely to sign with me long-term than JJ Peterka is. I need one of those 2 things to be true, or else there's no point in me making the deal. So that's where Miller comes up as an idea for me. Otherwise, I'm letting him play. Peterka, as an RFA this summer, cannot become a UFA for, I believe it's at least 2 more seasons after this year. You've got some time to do this. You've got time to figure it out. And I would want to play that, maybe not to the very end, but the summer before he can become an unrestricted free agent would be when I would really start to feel anxious and really start to feel motivated like I had to do something. Otherwise, is a good player. I'm still trying to score as many goals as possible. I know he could get better on the power play, but I'm hoping that that can be an internal solution for Peterka, that he could be a part of that improvement. So I'm not moving off of him. So when I see that he's number 1 on that trade bait board, I don't really think he's going to get traded, because I think the offer would kind of have to blow Kevin Adams' socks off. And how likely is that to happen? You know, it could. I don't want to say that it couldn't. There was that rumor from the trade deadline. It wasn't even just a rumor. It was from 2 credible NHL insiders, Frank Saravelli from Daily Faceoff and Renaud Lavoie from TVA up in Canada. Both tweeted out on trade deadline night, the night before trade deadline day, that Peterka to the Rangers looked to be a done deal. That came from somewhere. It ended up being bogus. He did not get traded to the New York Rangers. But I've always been curious. Those guys are not affiliated with each other. They don't work for the same company. Why did 2 credible insiders at the same time have the same information that ended up being wrong? Where did they get it? Who wanted them to know it? Who wanted people out there to know it? Because if you really evaluate that, it's maybe tough to figure out. You might argue the Sabres would be, if they wanted to trade Peterka or were willing to, that they would be most motivated for that information to get out there, because if another team interested in Peterka saw, hey, Rangers are closing in on the deal, that's how you get them to call you last minute to up their offer. But I don't believe personally the Sabres were playing that game, and I don't believe that they were willing to trade Peterka. So cross them off the list. I don't think because of that logic that the Rangers benefit by having that information out there. So I would cross them off the list. Peterka's camp, his agent, where would he stand to benefit from putting that information out there? I guess the most it could be would be that it would tell everybody, hey, this guy's available, but the way that's not how you would do that. You wouldn't say, well, this team is getting close to making a deal. And then, of course, the other possible answer, and I don't think this is true, but it might have been, is that it was just the truth, that the Rangers were closing in on a deal and that something last second stopped it. Whether that is ownership not signing off on it, either side, Rangers, James Dolan, or Sabres, Terry Pagula, that there was a haggling about, an extra draft pick one way or the other. That happened once upon a time, way back when, with Rasmus Ristolainen and the Winnipeg Jets. There was a Ristolainen deal that was seemingly done with the Jets that didn't happen because the GMs were haggling about a mid-round pick. Sometimes you get something like that. So maybe that's also a possibility, is that those two reports, maybe they were true. And the reason it didn't happen was they thought at that time that it was going to go through, and then something last second stopped it. Also a possibility. I think the most likely, I guess I don't know what the most likely outcome is. I don't like any of these options. Maybe I'm missing one and there's something out here that I didn't mention that is more obvious for this. But I take seriously the idea that he could be dealt. Something could force the Sabres' hand, because I do think it's curious that two different reporters, both credible from two different networks, two different countries even, both reported the same thing at the same time on trade deadline night. Someone was feeding them that information. All right, when we come back, Connor Clifton, not a player we talk about often. Got a text question about Connor Clifton. Hey, what's going to happen with him? He's under contract for $3 million, $3.3 million next season. What will happen with him? I've got the answer of what I hope happens with him. That when we come back here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. The Sabres getting ready for the draft, getting ready for free agency. The other newsy thing that I should have mentioned here about the Sabres is Jason Karmanos is going to stick with the organization, it appears. There was a report from Lance Lysowski about a month ago that it looks as though Karmanos, associate GM of the Buffalo Sabres, GM of the Rochester Americans, might be exiting the organization. Karmanos, talking to Matthew Fairburn yesterday from The Athletic, says, I've got a year left on my contract, and I haven't been told different that I'm not working for this organization, so I'm still in this organization. Now, that doesn't mean he'll stay. The Sabres, once upon a time, gave a vote of confidence in the media to their general manager and then fired him 2 weeks later. So you never know. But for now, Karmanos appears to be sticking, which I think is a good thing. I like Karmanos. I like his resume. I think he is honestly the most qualified person that currently works in the Sabres hockey department. So the idea of losing him to me didn't sit great. Not to say he's done everything perfect. The Amherst have done pretty well, and that's the team he's in charge of. You'd like to see more of a direct impact on the Sabres, but whatever. All right, Connor Clifton. Got a text question about this. If you would like to ever get a text question in, be sure to hit us up. Join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres is the place to sign up. Connor Clifton. It hasn't gone great. It's been 2 seasons, and he's been a healthy scratch at times, signed away from the Boston Bruins. Remember, he was a healthy scratch for the Bruins at the end of his tenure there. Comes to the Sabres. He has played 152 games. He has 34 points. Not an offensive player at all. Not what he's asked to do. but he was expected to come in and be a solid defensive defenseman, be an option for the top four, or be a very good third pair defenseman. I would argue that neither has happened in the 2 years for the Buffalo Sabres. To me, I have not seen much of anything that excites me about his skill set and his game for this team. He is a guy that'll stand up for teammates. He'll throw his body around, but when it comes to puck management skills, when it comes to penalty killing, even when it comes to any sort of jumping up in the play offensively, I just don't see any of it. I see just a guy and not somebody that I think is more than replacement level, but he is certainly paid like he is above replacement level at $3.3 million. The Sabres, I would like to see get some more cap room. They actually, if they pay everybody, and I don't think they'll pay Byram, so I don't think that will happen. But if they did, they're right up against the cap. So creating a little bit of extra room would be nice. The cap going up, even with that, by the way, said, they would still be up against the cap if they just paid everybody about what their market value is. One place you get $3.3 million is by finding a way to dump Connor Clifton onto another team. Or you also would have the option this summer of buying him out. The buyout for Connor Clifton would be 2 years, and you would have to pay him on the cap. Let's do that first. On the cap, it would cost you $1.1 million this year and $1.1 million next year, as opposed to the $3.3 million that you'd have on your books for this season. His base salary in a buyout, total of $2.2 million. It's the same as the cap hit. We know the Sabres like to save money where they can. And I would imagine if you brought to Terry Pegula and the Sabres brass, hey, this player's not really helping us. We save cap dollars by buying him out. And it's $1 million less that you have to pay him if we get rid of him right now. I kind of think that that's a realistic possibility. I almost want to predict that's what happens, that Connor Clifton gets bought out. And that, to me, is the thing I would like to see. I'd love to sit here and tell you, well, my favorite idea is to trade him. And maybe there's a team out there that, is looking for a skill set that Clifton offers, and maybe you could get a 7th round pick. I don't think anybody wants him at that salary. And the Sabres do not retain salary. They've not done it in a trade in years. So, sure, if I'm Kevin Adams, if I'm even above that, I'm Terry Pegula, I'm going to trade Connor Clifton for a low-level draft pick, and I'll take whatever salary back that you need. You want one half. You want the 1.6? I'll retain the 1.6. Give me the draft pick. But I don't expect that to happen. So I think the best outcome, and I think the most realistic outcome, is that he's bought out. Second to that would be he's just on the team, and he's an option to play games for them this year. Maybe he's a healthy scratch one way or another. Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't. I don't need to see him on the roster, though, this year, and I kind of hope that that's not what ends up happening. Connor Clifton. There we go. Short and sweet. Last year, didn't do much. Played 73 games, 1 goal, 15 assists, 16 minutes of ice time a night. And I'm good with it being over after 2 years between the Sabres and him. All right, that's going to do it for us today here in the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you've got a text question or a trade idea that you'd like to get in, feel free. Or would love to hear if you like my double trade idea. I feel like I'm going to be mentioning it a lot. I love it. I kind of love it. Again, Peterka for Miller and Byram for Byfield is what I'm looking for. I think the best, you really need the Kings to be in on that more than anybody, because the Rangers seem, just from Friedman's report, more willing to part with Miller. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll see if the Florida Panthers advance to the Stanley Cup final tonight. Also, talked a little Jeff Skinner yesterday, and Zach Hyman gets injured for the Oilers last night. They have a couple of options at forward. They also could go 11 forward, 7D, and bring Matthias Ekholm back in the lineup when he gets healthy. I think you're going to see Jeff Skinner tomorrow and see him play his first game since game 1 of the first round, but we'll see. They have a young guy too that's never played in the playoffs that could play in the bottom 6. They might put him there. But we'll see. Skinner might get back in the lineup because the Oilers are going through some injuries. If you want more on all playoff stuff, be sure to check out our sister show, Locked On NHL Game Night. That's available wherever you get your podcasts, every game, every night until the Stanley Cup is awarded. Check it out wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll talk to you tomorrow here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.